Which iPad should you buy? Hey everyone, digital art world just got a little shakeup. Apple just dropped a new generation of iPads and guess what? For the first time ever, there is a new big screen iPad Air. The colorful iPad Air, known for its marketing aiming directly to creatives, has of course always been a tempting choice for artists. However, it never quite matched up with the iPad Pro simply because of its smaller screen size available. But now, the iPad Air throws down a real challenge and the ever so present question is, which iPad is best for digital artists? Is the new Pro worth the extra cost, or is the big iPad Air now the artist's sweet spot? And what about the older generations? All of that in today's video. By the end I will also reveal which iPad I just bought, so stick around. First things first, we need to talk about what we artists really need when it comes down to a drawing tablet. And the most important things are, first, a big responsive screen with nice color accuracy. Second, of course, a nice drawing pencil. And then we need a lot of RAM because we want to work on a lot of layers and the number of them is defined by RAM. Last but not least, of course, we need a reasonable pricing, right? Because artists are not the most rich people out there. So, which iPads out there are even an option for us now? Like I said before, we can exclude the old iPad Air models from our list simply because they only come with this 10.9-inch screen. They can be suitable for drawing, but not for too elaborate or professional illustrations. And so are the normal iPads, which also only come with this 10.9-inch screen. We are in search for the ideal choice for artists, and sooner or later, 10.9-inch will limit your drawing experience. So let's take a look at the iPad Pro lineup, because you can buy the older models relatively cheap in a used or refurbished condition. All of them have the big screen, they have compatibility with an Apple Pencil, which all are quite awesome. Yeah, RAM, that's where we have to draw the line, because the third generation of iPad Pro models only comes with 4GB of RAM, and I previously had this one, and at least for me it was definitely a reason to switch. It kinda really limits the amount of layers you can create in your drawing app. Even the 4th gen iPad Pros, they come with 6GB of RAM, it's okay but not ideal. But starting from the 5th generation onwards, all iPad Pros come with 8GB of RAM, which is definitely sufficient for us. You can often get the Pro models with a 16GB RAM version. That's a pricey affair and in my opinion not worth the cost. If I could get by with 4GB for years, everyone can get by with 8, I'm pretty sure. So yes, you could leave the video now, buy an older iPad Pro model and be happy and satisfied for quite a while. But generally speaking, and ignoring the risk that you always have when you buy used or refurbished, it is never too bad to have a newer model. For security updates, latest iOS, better app compatibility and the overall performance. Apple is pretty good in this regard, I have to give them credits there, but yeah, devices still just age. So let's have a closer look at the iPads we have left for our comparison. Of course, we have the new iPad Air with its big 13-inch screen, the newest iPad Pro, also 13-inch, and the 5th and 6th generation iPad Pro 12.9-inch from 2021 and 2022. Let's talk about them so that you can make a well-informed decision by the end of this video and invest your money wisely. First and most importantly, of course, the price, which can get a little hefty with Apple products, I know. But I could find the 12.9-inch 5th generation base model refurbished with a year warranty and in excellent condition for about $740. Same features, but 6th generation for $890. If you're lucky, you still might find this one new somewhere. We will determine later on if the price difference between those two is justified. However, if buying refurbished or used is a total no-go for you, then the new iPad Air 13-inch starts at a similar price of $800, which isn't actually that expensive if you take into account that you couldn't get a big screen new iPad for less than $1,000 before. And to put this into perspective, the new iPad Pro with 13-inch costs already $1,300. I'd say that makes not only the iPad Air, which is $500 less, quite attractive, but also lets you reconsider if you buy refurbished, if you haven't already. But where does this significant price difference come from, and might it be worth the cost? The main reason for the price difference is the screen, because for the first time ever in an iPad, the new Pro comes with an OLED display. And it's not just any OLED, it's a so-called tandem OLED. Basically, this means there are two OLEDs stacked on top of each other, which makes the screen extremely bright, up to 1000 nits in full screen standard use, and for comparison, the other three models only go up to 600 nits. If you're planning to work outside a lot, that could be a deal for you, but you have to ask yourself, who works outside? Personally, with my 600 nits, I have never encountered any issues when I work by a window or in a very lit area yet. But the real advantage of OLED is that it gives you amazing contrast and rich true colors. Because instead of using small clusters of LEDs like in other displays, OLED can turn on and off every LED individually. Individually? Okay, and that means you get real deep blacks. Pretty awesome, but you have to ask yourself if that's really worth the cost for you. Especially because there is a small but significant disadvantage in OLEDs: the risk of burn-in. Apple claims that the new tandem technology has increased the longevity of the iPad OLEDs, but the risk remains, and honestly that makes me think a lot, especially considering that you sometimes draw for hours having the same user interface displayed. In any case, when I buy Apple products, I always have the resale value in mind, and that plays a role. But enough about the OLED, let's talk about the other displays. The two older Pro models feature a Liquid Retina XDR display, which in simple terms is a mini LED display. These displays are still incredible. If the new OLED is an A++ in these days, then the mini LED is still a solid A+. The iPad Air, on the other hand, has only a Liquid Retina display, which is a regular LED. It's still a nice display, and to stay in our reference, I would still grade it with an A. Perfectly suitable for casual use and also digital art. However, when compared to the OLED or the mini LEDs, it might look a little bit more washed out. And definitely it isn't as bright as the OLED. But so aren't the mini LEDs. When watching standard content, like you probably do now with my YouTube video, the older Pros are comparable in brightness with the new Air, and by watching standard content, I strictly refer to SDR content, standard dynamic range, not HDR, high dynamic range. For HDR content, the Pros can get a little bit more bright than the Air, about 1000 nits full screen. But don't worry, HDR is more important for videography and photography, where you need to capture a wider range of light and shadows. It isn't as important for digital art and illustrating. As for my own experience with the screens, I don't know what I was expecting, but when I walked into the Apple store looking for that new hyped OLED, I was a little bit disappointed because I couldn't make a real difference to my 6th generation iPad Pro model. And because the name tags of the iPads were mixed up by customers in the store, we couldn't even make a difference of the big iPad Air and the iPad Pro in the first place. But you also have to mention that the room there is very lit. Another price-driving fact for the new Pro is its M4 processor, which has now been included for the first time ever in an Apple product. Interestingly, Apple skipped the M3 entirely. The Air uses the M2, so does the 6th generation iPad Pro, and the 5th generation features the M1. While researching, I noticed the internet is flooded complaining that the iPads are not able to fully utilize the M chips. And the problem is iPadOS, which limits the full potential of these chips. iPads are optimized for being touch tablets, not computers, and there are very few apps that fully leverage the power of these chips in an iPad. Final Cut Pro is often cited as an example for the necessity and capability of an M4 in an iPad, but realistically, who edits videos on an iPad if they have a laptop or computer at home? And better yet, who buys an iPad for video editing? It's just too fiddly, and like all these apps, it doesn't feature all the functionalities it would on a desktop version. Overall, the M1 already offers excessive powers for drawing apps, and there's almost nothing the M4 can do the M1 can't. To know there's any improvement, you would need to be creating high quality videos or 3D graphics or complex music compositions. So the short answer is no, the M4 is not worth the extra cost and not necessary for drawing. As long as iPadOS limits the full power of these M chips, the M4 is not worth it. Probably that will remain, or the iPads become too big competitors to the MacBooks. Before we move on with more interesting and important differences, let's cover our list of features you shouldn't stress about, even though they might look important and interesting at first glance. Like the camera. All of those 4 models have cameras that are enough for taking reference photos of your hand or face. Similar thing about the speakers, though the iPad Air only has 2 stereo speakers, while the Pros have 4. The newest Air and Pro have their front cameras moved to the long side. Nice for a more natural feeling on calls, but nothing groundbreaking. By the way, Apple claims the battery life of all these iPads is the same. Even the iPad Pro with its Supreme M4, but they simply made the new iPad Pro the thinnest product they ever had. Probably they thought 10 hours of battery life are enough for everyone. If it comes to storage, as an artist, you will have to commit to an external hard drive or a cloud storage for your work, or you won't be happy ever after. No, you will soon realize that there is almost no difference between having 128 GB or 512. And don't get the terabyte version, the extra cost is insane and not worth the money. But enough with these minor aspects, let's move on with the more important stuff. Maybe even the most important of all for artists, the Pencil. 5th and 6th generation iPad Pro models are both compatible with the Apple Pencil. Second, which is still one of the best drawing pencils out there, but be aware you cannot use it in the new 2024 models. Not the Air and not the new Pro. If you plan to upgrade to one of these, then you will have to buy a new Apple Pencil. It's called Apple Pencil Pro. It also just released. And unfortunately it is not backward compatible, which means you cannot use it in the older Pro models. Pretty disappointing if you ask me, but thankfully it is no game changer. Though it has a couple of new interesting features. One of them is called Find My feature, and like the name says, it helps you find your Apple Pencil if you lose it. I don't know who asked for this feature, but it is nice. Another new thing is the ability to squeeze the Apple Pencil, which will open a shortcut menu, or you can even assign your own shortcut to this gesture. The best feature in my opinion is called Barrel Roll, and it recognizes if you rotate the pencil, for example, can then adjust brush tips accordingly. This can be especially cool for calligraphy artists, but for me, I mainly use round brush shapes these days, and that wouldn't change anything to them. Eventually, all of these features are nice gimmicks, but you don't need them for digital art. But there's more about the Apple Pencil that we have to talk about. It's called hover function. Out of the models we're comparing today, it's only missing in the 5th generation Pro. The hover function allows the iPad to detect the Apple Pencil when it is hovering a couple millimeters over this screen, but without touching it. And this enables actions like, for example, a description popping up when you hover over a tool in a drawing app. This can be particularly helpful if you're learning a new software, for example. When I started digital art on my XP Pen, I loved that feature a lot, and I missed it when I changed to iPad. But after some time, I totally forgot about its existence, and now I love it again. But you have to decide yourself if this is really necessary. Like I said, I totally forgot about it for years. Alright, I hope you're still there with me and ready for a very debated topic. Some claim it's the ultimate decider if an iPad feels smooth or not, while others don't notice it at all. ProMotion, boasting a 120Hz display instead of 60Hz. I've heard a few non-artists claim that 120Hz are totally necessary for artists because it makes brush strokes less laggy and way more responsive than on a 60Hz display. But I have to clear things up. You really have to concentrate to feel this difference. I'm used to 120Hz, but I tried 60Hz several times and I had to focus a lot to notice any difference. So if you're someone who can't settle with anything that is less than 120Hz, you have to go with an iPad Pro, because the iPad Air doesn't feature ProMotion. But if you're scratching your head about all this Hertz thing I'm talking about, then you don't need it at all. You're still not sure if you need it, right? I suggest you head over to an Apple store and experience it firsthand. And even if you notice something, then consider this. Most display tablets, even the pricey ones, aren't as smooth as a regular iPad paired with Procreate. And yes, you heard right. Just the regular iPad. Software, hardware, same producer, they are optimized for each other. So, if you haven't noticed already, or maybe I have said it before, 1 month ago I just bought the 12.9-inch 6th generation iPad Pro. I urgently needed a new iPad because my old one couldn't handle my elaborate commissions anymore. Finishing them got a total hassle for me. Then I heard rumors about the upcoming iPad generation featuring OLED, including the iPad Air. I'm not someone who should have an OLED, because I always keep my iPad's display turned on, especially when I'm filming, like right now. See? At the moment, display timeout is completely turned off. I had been waiting for the new big iPad for months, and then they delayed the release for 1 more month, and my commission couldn't wait any longer, so I went to the Apple Store and bought my new iPad Pro 6th generation. Today I feel very drawn to the new iPad Air because it is 300 euros less than the iPad Pro. It doesn't have the OLED, which you might have noticed I'm a little bit scared of, and it could perform all the drawing tasks that I have. Plus, the best of all, it is compatible with the new Apple Pencil Pro. In summary, yes, I think the iPad Air 13-inch is kind of a pro killer, because you don't need those newest generations of iPad Pro models for digital painting anymore. And maybe it's more than not only digital painting. If you're a casual user and watching this video, I would definitely recommend the iPad Air to you too. But if you're okay with a little risk and find a nice offer for the 5th or 6th generation iPad Pro, then go for it. They mainly differ in the M processor, which we just learned make almost no difference. But if you want to play it safe and are okay with a slightly inferior display in exchange for the Apple Pencil Pro compatibility, then go for the Air.